Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. Bosnia's Ancient Pyramids. The most mysterious pyramids in the world are not in Egypt, they aren't in ancient Greece, and they can't be found anywhere in Mesoamerica. The strangest and most controversial pyramids on the planet are in the Balkans, in the small European country of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Amateur archaeologist Sam Osmanagic believes these great pyramids are so big, people have been mistaking them for mountains for centuries. He calls one of them the Pyramid of the Moon, and the one standing next to it is the Pyramid of the Sun, rising an unbelievable 720 feet into the clouds. There is also supposedly a third pyramid nearby in the hills, and Sam says all of them are 12,000 years old. Unfortunately, Sam is most likely wrong, because most of Europe was under about 1 mile of ice 12,000 years ago. At this point, humanity hadn't even begun to grow crops, never mind build megalithic structures. The dating just doesn't make sense. However, that hasn't stopped Europeans from going crazy over these alleged pyramids. Since the claims began circulating in 2005, there have been over 400,000 people who have visited the sites, and yet nobody has confirmed the pyramid-shaped hills to be artificial structures. As far as most scientists are concerned, they are just mountains, but if they are ever proved to be 12,000-year-old pyramids, it will change human history forever. Number 9. Early opium. At a burial site in Israel dating back to the Bronze Age, archaeologists have found something unexpected. They came across the earliest evidence of somebody using opium in the ancient world. Researchers found residue of opium, which is an extremely powerful narcotic, inside pottery vessels over 3,500 years old. The jars were scattered around the burial site in central Israel at Tel Yehud. This region was once known as Canaan and was the famous home of the Canaanites from the Bible. It was archaeologists with the Israel Antiquities Authority who first discovered the mysterious burial site in 2012. But it wasn't until recently that they identified traces of opium inside the pottery. They tested 22 storage jars and found that 8 of them contained obvious amounts of the highly addictive substance. What's even more interesting is that the pottery vessels were not all made in Israel. Some of them were imported from the island of Cyprus, suggesting some kind of prehistoric opium trading network. Researchers are now guessing that early Neolithic communities learned of the natural properties of opium and used it to their advantage. Since the plant did grow naturally across the Mediterranean, it would have been an easy thing to farm and cultivate. What nobody's entirely sure about is just how heavily addicted ancient people may have been to opium. We know the ancient Egyptians only allowed their best warriors and their priests to use opium. We also know it was used by the Sumerians to reach higher states of spirituality. However, in ancient Israel, it looks like the Canaanites may have been using it recreationally and in very unhealthy amounts. Number 8. Chapultepec artifacts. Archaeologists in Mexico have come across a collection of artifacts in a rather unexpected place in Mexico City. These artifacts were hiding just underneath the surface of Chapultepec Forest in Mexico City. This is one of the oldest urban forests anywhere in Latin America, with archaeological sites inside of it dating back to 1200 BC. The forest has been an important place in Mexico's history for over 3,000 years. These days, the forest is managed by the National Institute of Anthropology and History. It's also a popular park just outside the bustling streets of Mexico City's historic district, a place where hundreds of thousands of people walk every single day. The recently discovered artifacts were being trampled by people daily as they walked through the park, and nobody had a clue. Archaeologists decided to dig about 3 feet under the surface. They immediately found burned clay vessels, curious human figurines, and even charred artifacts that appeared to have been burned in strange rituals. It turns out, this forest was the home of a pre-classical village during the height of the Teotihuacan civilization, between 225 and 550 AD. Sadly though, archaeologists can't just dig up the whole park, and people will most likely continue to walk over everything without realizing. Number 7. Crystal stuffed dino eggs. A pair of dinosaur eggs were recently discovered by paleontologists in China. The dinosaur eggs are each about the size of a cannonball and are filled with strange, shining crystals. This whole discovery turned out to be extremely strange. It's not that unusual to find dinosaur eggs, but they aren't normally filled with crystals. Also, paleontologists don't know what dinosaur species laid the eggs. They believe the eggs belong to a previously unknown dinosaur, one they don't currently have a name or description for. The dinosaur eggs were found in the Anhui province of East China and were dug up from the bare soil. Researchers say the eggs are nearly spheroid, like oblong cannonballs, and their inner surface is covered in calcite crystals. Calcite is a mineral typically found in bird eggs and dinosaur eggs. The crystals likely formed when the calcium carbonate separated from the structure of the eggshell and was deposited on the inside surface. Then, over millions of years, it grew into calcite crystals. It's something that can happen, but it's incredibly rare to find with dinosaur eggs. Number 6. Fossils in the mountains. As unbelievable as it may sound, fossils from one of the first reefs in the world were found on top of mountains in Nevada, specifically the mountains of Esmeralda County. High above the deserts of southwestern Nevada, not far from the border of California's Death Valley, traces of a tropical reef have been discovered. This reef was alive 520 million years ago, right after a period known as the Cambrian explosion. This was a time when the Earth exploded with rich biodiversity of complex life. At that time, Nevada was completely covered by water, and the mountains of Esmeralda County were on the sea floor. Organisms that lived and died in the prehistoric ocean were buried in the sediment, along with dead corals. Millions of years later, these fossilized corals and animals rose to the peaks of the mountains to be found by paleontologists. A paleontologist from Johns Hopkins University in Maryland, Emmy Smith, recently visited these mountains to find more fossils. Smith said that even though she was walking around on mountains, it also felt like she was scuba diving. She and her team came across the fossilized remains of filter-feeding sponges called archaeocyaths. And of course, they also found plenty of traces of extinct life from one of the first coral reefs to ever thrive in the ocean. What other amazing archaeological discoveries do you think could be hiding on mountaintops? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're at it, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 5. Treasure in the Bahamas. On January 4th, 1656, a navigational error caused the Nuestra Señora de las Maravillas to sink. The ship was a massive Spanish galleon that was on a voyage to Spain from the Americas. The ship had just loaded itself to the brim with treasure stolen from the native people, disguised as royal tax and private property. These riches were taken from the conquered tribes of the New World so that the King of Spain could grow even richer. However, the ship never made it to Spain. It sank, and all the treasure went down with it. The site of the wreckage was relocated almost immediately after the ship sank, but nobody could find any of its treasure. In the following centuries, many people tried desperately to get rich by scavenging the shipwreck. It wasn't until 1972 that explorer Robert Marks salvaged some small pieces of the wreckage. Then, even more remains were salvaged between 1986 and the early 1990s by Herbert Humphreys. But it was just recently that a team of underwater treasure hunters finally brought up the good stuff. A team with Allen Exploration, created with help from the government of the Bahamas, discovered a small trove of treasure. Down at the bottom of the ocean, off the coast of the Bahamas, hiding under layers of silt, they found solid silver bars, gold chains, emerald pendants, and other amazing relics. This was no easy discovery because the treasure was scattered along about an 8-mile stretch of the ocean floor. People had been searching for the treasure in the wreckage, when in reality it had already been pushed by the ocean currents for miles in all directions. The treasure will now be put on display at the Bahamas Maritime Museum. Number 4. The Harakboot Face. The face of Harakboot is one of the most mysterious things that's ever been found in the Amazon rainforest. It's located in an extremely remote part of the Peruvian Amazon, first photographed and spread online in 2014. But since then, nobody has studied the face, and we still don't know much about it. All we know is that a large rock in the middle of the jungle appears to have been carved to look like a face, and it most likely happened a long time ago. There's just no way to confirm if the face was carved by human hands or if it's a freaky accident of nature. For the indigenous Harakboot people, the face has always existed. Stories have been passed down from generation to generation of the stone face, and so it's become a silent god to the natives who live in the jungle. The Harakboot also say there are 2 other sculpted stone faces, but they are so deep in the forest, nobody has ever found them. Mysteriously, even though the locals have heard tales of the face of Harakboot for generations, nobody can say exactly where it came from. Not even the Harakboot know who crafted the face or what its purpose was, but they do have some guesses. Because the face is carved into the side of a cliff overlooking a long stretch of river, it may have been made to represent a guardian spirit of the jungle. Number 3. The Coral City of Lelu. The Coral City of Lelu can be found somewhere that you wouldn't expect to find an ancient ruin. It's on Lelu Island in the Federated States of Micronesia, a small island paradise in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The island looks like any other random tropical island, and it's covered in tall trees, rich in biodiversity, and has beautiful, pristine beaches. But it was also occupied by a small group of people around the year 1250 AD, and they thrived up until the 19th century, when European missionaries and whalers showed up. There were only around 1,500 people living on the island, but they built a very unique city with its own hierarchy. The city itself was divided into sections based on class, and there was the mighty king in the very center of the city. Then the wealthy aristocracy surrounded the king with houses made of strong basalt rock. To the west, the lower aristocracy lived in less impressive houses made of coral. Spreading out from these rich areas was the bulk of the population, island peasants living in rudimentary thatch huts. But here's what makes the city of Lelu so mysterious. Nobody knows exactly who built it. The people are long gone, and all we have are unreliable reports from early European visitors. 200 years ago, these visitors claimed the mysterious Coral City was built by Spanish castaways, pirates, and some even claimed it was the Japanese. Number 2. Coins in the kitchen. A couple made a mysterious and unexpected discovery under the floorboards of their own kitchen. The UK couple were undergoing renovations at their home when they stumbled upon an incredible stash of ancient treasure. The couple, who don't want to be named for privacy reasons, found a cup that was no larger than your average soda can. However, this cup was filled to the brim with 260 coins, all of them dating from between 1610 and 1727. According to the Spink & Son auction house where the coins will be sold, their total worth is nearly $400,000. The discovery of the coins is now considered one of the largest of its kind in British history from the 18th century. But the real mystery is just how random the discovery was. They were tearing up their floorboards and chiseling away at the concrete underneath when they thought they hit an electric cable. But it turned out to be an old cup filled with life-changing wealth. The coins were minted during the reigns of King James I, King Charles I, and King George I. Local experts say the coins most likely belong to an influential mercantile family named the Fernley Maesters. They made their wealth trading iron ore, timber, and coal before they turned to lawmaking in the 1700s. They likely buried the coins underneath their house, but then later died. The house was purchased and sold multiple times through the centuries, and nobody bothered to dig up the floorboards. Number 1. Mammoth Tooth. It was the middle of September 2022 when Art Castillo took a walk along the Cotton Belt Trail in Waco, Texas. According to what Art told local news, he walks this trail about 3 times a week. As he was hiking, he looked down and saw something that seemed a little unusual. It almost looked like a rock, yet it had strange lines and patterns on it. It was also covered in mysterious layers that made it seem important. Art picked up the curious object and took it with him. It turned out that he had stumbled upon a mammoth tooth while strolling through the Texas Trail. He took the artifact to the Waco Mammoth National Monument and learned that he had a fossilized molar from a Columbian mammoth in his possession. The mammoth tooth is between 25,000 and 50,000 years old and was once in the mouth of one of the greatest creatures that ever walked across North America. In the end, Art Castillo didn't even keep the tooth. He donated it to the local museum so that kids and other visitors could enjoy it in the years to come. Thanks for watching! Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Bye!